Nissan has always been great at designing and engineering sports cars that are not only affordable but also great driving machines. So ever since the 1969, the Godfather, the Datsun 240Z, all the way up to the current Nissan Z, which I think is a perfect modernization of the 240Z, they've always had this special and unique vibe to them. So in this video, I'm going to take the two best-selling Z cars, the 350Z and the 370Z. I'm going to compare them when it comes to the design, and I'm going to let you know which one I think is the best design and which one I would personally buy. We're going to jump into Photoshop and analyze the front, side, and rear side by side, and also the interior, which made a huge leap when it comes for the 350Z up to the 370Z. And I'm going to show you something very cool when it comes to the line flow. When I start sketching the lines here in Photoshop, specifically in side view, something almost magical is going to happen with the line flow. Last but not least, we're going to have to check out the proportions and the overall perception of how these two cars feel when it comes to the proportions, specifically in a side view here as well. But before we do that, let's cover some of the basic specs, starting with the 350Z compared to the 370Z here. The 350Z has 300 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque. It weighs about 3,200 pounds, 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds. Back in 2003, that was a quick sports car. 60 to 0 feet in braking, 112 feet, and the quarter mile is done in 13.5 seconds. Now compare this to the 370Z. Went up from 300 horsepower to 332 horsepower. You have 10 pound-feet of torque more, 270 pound-feet of torque. However, it only added 100 pounds to the weight of the 370Z compared to the 350Z. And 0 to 60 here is 4.5 seconds to 0.6 seconds faster than the 370Z. Braking power is 60 to 0, 105 feet. Also better than the 350Z, of course. And the quarter mile is down a second quicker at 12.5 seconds. So, with that said, let's jump straight into it here. Let's jump into Photoshop. Have a look at these two beauties. Classic sports car by now. I think the 370Z came out in 2003, and the 370Z maybe 2007-ish or something like that, I do believe. So looking at both of these cars, they're very different when it comes to the design of these, because the 350Z to me feels a lot more static, but not in a bad way. It's still a very, very good looking vehicle. We have the front end here with the headlights being up on the fender, creating this exotic feel for this. We also have this very simple opening in the lower section. I do love the Nismo version of this. We have a completely different front bumper, way more aggressive, and we have a bunch of small beautiful chamfers here as well. For example, this for the reflector light down there, and some lines on the hood as well, looking beautiful. It's a very simplistic design and a very unique looking design as well. I can't wait to show you the side view here. Now looking at the 370Z, of course, it got a lot more organic and a lot more rounded everywhere, and it feels a lot more beefy as well, specifically with this rear fender right here, how this bulges out and creates a very powerful stance in the rear end. You can see that the headlights, they sit in the same location, but now we have this a different outline for it, of course, with this cutout piece right here that goes into the bodywork. The overall design, I think, looks great as well, even though it got a lot more rounded, a lot more organic. Both of them have a very unique styling to them, and unmistakably Z, of course. One thing I was never really a fan of are these fins down here at the bottom that sticks up like this. I would just want to have a squared off intake down here at the bottom. But again, if you look at the Nismo version of the 370Z, it looks a lot better, in my opinion, than the regular 370Z. And this was around for a long time. I think it was up until 2023 that they sold this, or even 2024. So a very long run for the 370Z, and he got a lot of updates over the years. And the last Nismo looked almost completely different than this version that we have here. This is, I think, the second iteration. This is one facelift up from the base 370Z. Now looking at the side view, and I popped in the 240Z here, because to me, the 240Z is just a legendary vehicle, and the proportions of this it's almost as stunning as a Ferrari 250 GTO, but cost about 500 times less, obviously. it still has this classic 60s sports car design. Look at the shoulder line here and this Z line, the roof line that dips all the way down and never really comes back up in the rear end. We do have a small spoiler there. We have the chrome pieces here being 60s car. You can see how high the ride height is here. This is something we can't really have in a modern vehicle. We need to bring everything down lower to the ground. But just having these lines here, if I were to remove this, you can already see just by the lines I sketched out that this is a 240Z by just looking at these key lines that we have. And that is what I call a strong brand identity for every single Z car. Now looking at the 350Z here, and this is where it gets really cool, because if we sketch out the lines here, first of all, we have this curvature here that goes from the bottom and creates the almost like an Audi TT, the edge for the headlight going into the shoulder line, coming back here, and then also goes down here in the rear end, dipping down again, creating a very nice sharp design for the key graphics, which are the taillights in this case. And we also have this shoulder line similar to the shoulder line we have in the 240Z here up top. And the thing about the 350Z is the roof line does actually create this almost trunk-like design. So we almost have a 3-box design for the 350Z, and that is the main difference when it comes to the 370Z and the 350Z, is that the 350Z went back to the sloping 240Z line. But I do like this line here as well, from the greenhouse coming down, dipping down, and creating this framing for the outer section, and the door going back up here again out into the roof. The wheelbase, if you look at the wheelbase between the 350Z and the 370Z, I always thought that the 350Z looked longer, and I'm not sure if the wheelbase is longer on the 350Z, but it definitely looks like a longer car. I do think this trunk design has something to do with that as well. Now looking at the 370Z down here, we went back to first a lot of key graphics from the 240Z came back here in the 370. For example, this line right here, which in the 350 had this curvature to it, which was not in line with the 240Z. The 240Z has more of a very sharp corner up here. You can see it right here. And that then came back in the 370Z down here, looking beautiful, in addition to this roof line that we talked about in the 240Z, just dipping down and never really coming back up, instead becoming this rounded design in the rear end, looking very, very clean and organic. We also have this upswing here, similar to what we have in the 240Z again, this upswing right here. Well, in the 350Z, it was a straight line for the greenhouse. So if you're a big fan of the 240Z, the 370Z is definitely the design that is closer related to the original 240Z up here. Learn design sketching online with me. My online class is now only $47. If you have any desire to pick up the skill of sketching products using simple tools such as just a big pen and some cheap print paper, this is something you want to check out. Now, over the years, I've taught over thousands of students from all around the world how to sketch cars and products using my simple sketching techniques, and most of them have seen amazing results from my classes. Analog Designer Pro Pack is the full bundle of all my classes I've released over the years, and it's yours for just $47. You also have a lifetime access to all the videos. Check out everything that's included and see what my students have to say in the link in the description, or simply visit analogdesignerpropack.com. Now, looking at the lower section here, we have this nice cutout in the lower section, and we have this massive bulging fenders, both front and rear. And I do love how the roofline goes down and creates this line for the taillight design. We have the same sort of styling in the front end for the headlights right there. And overall, both of these 350Z and the 370Z to me are beautiful looking vehicles. They have some very unique styling to it. But again, as I said, if you want the 240Z design in a modern interpretation, you want to go with the 370Z instead of the 350Z. Now, last but not least, before we look at the interior, let's check out the rear ends of these two cars. This is where I actually prefer the 350Z, because I love how chiseled and chamfered this is. And we have a small little spoiler up, or not spoiler, but almost like a small subtle ducktail up top, and everything is so clean. We don't even have a housing for the exhaust pipes down at the bottom. Instead, they just sit here in the bodywork, looking very nice. You also have this cutout portion here, creating a nice design in the rear end, planting this rear end on the ground. And the taillights, again, having this one single line going into the taillights, creating these designs right here. And you can see I forgot to mention, if you look at the side view here, this line from the roof line goes down and connects right into the taillight design. You can see it here in the rear end as well. If we draw this line down from the roof line, draw it all the way down, you can see that it connects perfectly with the taillight design. Just a zigzag design that we have going on there. Stuff like that I love to see when we're stretching out key lines of the graphics and how they connect with key features in the overall design all around the vehicle. Now looking at the 370Z down here, you can see again, you got a lot more organic. We have this nice little spoiler up top now, but we still have this sharp corner in the A-pillar dipping down and creating the housing or the outline for the taillight graphics right here, looking beautiful. We now have more of an integration of the exhaust pipes and also this F1 style reflector light in the middle there as well. And again, this bulging fender, this is one of my favorite features of the 370Z, is just how big and massive this bulging fender is, creating this properly stance design for the 370Z compared to the 350Z, which was a lot flatter in this surface area right here. I love to see it here coming back and really properly planting the car on the ground. Now last but not least, the interiors. Now this is a huge upgrade in my opinion from the 350Z, which has a lot of hard plastic. You have to keep in mind that if this came out in 2003, that means that it was developed in the mid to late 90s. So this feels like a very outdated design, but it's still a very functional design. I do love that we have the tachometer big in the middle. We have these auxiliary gauges up here, and we also have the physical. Of course, back in the day, every single car, something I missed today, had the physical controls for the climate control settings, just like I want to see here. Other than that, it's a very simplistic design. The dash looks two parallel lines like this. That's all we got. We have the door handles here, similar design to the door handles that we have in the 370Z. And if we look at the 370Z here, they actually took a lot of parts from this car and put that into the 2024 Nissan Z just to save money. For example, these door handles here are exactly the same as the Nissan Z. We have modern looking gauge cluster compared to the 350Z up here. This still looks good. We still have the big tachometer in the middle and still have the beautiful auxiliary gauges up top with these beautiful caps on them as well, so you don't have any glare when you're looking at this. We also have this new infotainment screen with this big pad, and still of course had the physical knobs and buttons for the climate control settings, in addition to the manual gearboxes, something that is slowly disappearing today. But thankfully you can still get the 2024 Nissan Z with a manual transmission, which is of course very cool to see. So which one of these would I personally buy? Now, I've driven both of these. I love both of them. I think they have very unique designs, but since I am such a huge fan of the Datsun 240Z, I love the new Nissan Z because that is even more of a modernization of the original 240Z than 370Z was. But if I have to choose between these two, I'm probably going to go with a late version Nissan 370Z Nismo, just because of how they changed up the design in the front. The front end got a lot more aggressive. You have this big diffuser in the rear as well. It just looks great, and to me it's still a fantastic looking design, and it could probably go on for a few more years if we just updated the key features in the interior and also the lighting front and back. Let me know which one you would pick in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.